Good morning. My name is Kim Buren, and I just wanted to welcome you to Court Street this morning. I have been attending here for about 8 or 9 years, and I have 4 kids who have grown up in this church. And I also recently got remarried, and so I have a husband named Mike who is a brand new Court Streeter. We are in a sermon series right now called I Love My Church, and it's just been so fun to hear how this church has impacted many different people and the community all around. And I wanted to share with you this morning something that I love about Court Street. And one of those things is that Court Street has such a long history. We've been around for over 100 years, and so there's lots of people in the congregation who have been going to church here for decades. But at the same time, we are not a church that gets stuck in the past or is really only comfortable for older people. We have just an amazing, rich diversity of people who come to Court Street. And that was really highlighted for me this summer at a garage sale that I had. My husband and I struck up a conversation with a young couple who were brand new to Oregon and just looking for some things for a new apartment. And during the course of the conversation, we invited them to come to church with us. And the guy's immediate response was, "Oh no, I'm not a church person. I have 2 tattoos all over and I just wouldn't fit in." And it was so nice to be able to sincerely respond to him and say, "No, that's not the way that Court Street is. You would be welcomed and accepted here for just who you are and where you're at in life." And so I just wanted to say to you out there that if that's you, if you feel like you wouldn't fit in or you're not a church person, that is not true. You would be absolutely welcomed at Court Street. Our whole goal here is just to share the love of Jesus with those around us. So I, once again, just want to welcome you to Court Street this morning, and let's go into a time of worship.
Song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you. You open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, yes we do, God. Jesus, the name above every other name, Jesus, the only one who could ever save, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you, there is none beside you. You open up my eyes in wonder. Sometimes on this journey I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. My story isn't over, my story's just begun. 'Cause failure won't define me, yeah, that's what my Father does. No, failure won't define me, yeah, that's what my Father does. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Arrival's not the end game, the journey's where you start. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good. No failures never final when the Father's in the room. No failures never final when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Prodigals come home, the helpless find hope. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide and the dead comes to life. Love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Miracles take place and the cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. The Jericho walls are quaking, the strongholds now are shaking. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Oh, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house, check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, 'cause it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Ooh, you're in the Father's house.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Pastor Corey here with Court Street Christian Church. With Rebecca, we get to bring you our message today that's continuing our wonderful series about why we love this church, why we love this place, why we love you, who actually are the church that is Court Street Christian Church.
Yeah, so I had just a wild few weeks. My mom, who lives with us, she actually fell. She was downstairs vacuuming, and she tripped over the vacuum cord. She fell. She hurt herself. Her phone, though, was actually upstairs. But that woman, my mom, actually managed to get herself up the stairs, 17 stairs, to call me and let me know that she had really injured herself. I came home, I was up there assessing the situation. The problem was I knew she needed to get to the hospital. The injury was bad. I suspected it was probably a broken hip, and I didn't know how to get her downstairs. I thought about maybe doing something like a Yoda style, like putting her on my back and trying to get her downstairs, but alas, I am no Jedi, and I couldn't make that work. And finally, I just ended up needing to call the paramedics to come and help me with the situation. And so I let my mom know, Mom, I've called them, they're on their way, and my mom, in wincing in pain, she asked me to come closer, and I got closer to my dear mom, and she said, the paramedics are on their way, and I said, yes, Mom, the paramedics are on their way, and she said, okay, I'm going to need you to bring me my silver earrings and my lipstick. And I'm like, oh, she's always the classy woman and needed to spruce up before the paramedics came. But be assured, my mom, they got her down the stairs. She does have a broken hip. She had surgery. She's well on her way to recovery. But I was so grateful that our hospital has a mobile service that came to us when we needed them, came to us in a moment where I didn't know how to get her the help she needed to get her to the hospital. I was so grateful for it.
Yeah, and that idea of, you could have had to do the whole Yoda thing, take your mom to the hospital, that and the beauty of having services like that come to you is actually something that I love about this church, which is also something that is just part of the DNA of the church that Jesus created. And so the way that I want to draw attention to our mission, to our heartbeat today, is through this statement, is that we are leaving behind at Court Street a come to us mentality. Come join our club, come be here. Everybody's supposed to just come here. And we're moving towards a go-to-them type mentality. Now, like I just said, that was actually part of the DNA of what Jesus infused. When he handed off the baton to his earliest disciples, he gave them some great instructions. Here's one of them from Matthew chapter 28. Jesus talking to his closest disciples, and he says, here's what I want you guys to do. I want you guys to go out and do exactly what I've done with you. You make disciples. You walk alongside people. You show them how to do life the way that I've shown you how to do life, how to experience God the way I've shown you how to view God. And he goes, you make disciples of the people you like, your friends, your buddies. Do you just set up a shop and have everybody come to you? No, he says, you go. You make disciples of all nations. You baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. You teach them to obey everything that I've commanded you, and surely I'm with you to the very ends of the age. All of the scriptures that we have, they record that Jesus' final instructions to his disciples, they have this idea within them of go. In fact, Mark, one of his other disciples, recorded a final speech that said, go and preach the gospel to all of creation, he said. Not just people, but the whole of God's creation. And then in the book of Acts, where we read about the birth of the early church, where it really got traction and became a movement, he says, go to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the very ends of the earth. And so there's this exciting charter that we've been given, that the church is this mobile enterprise that is supposed to go forth and just share God's goodness and declare God's goodness to the entire creation. Well, when we look at the story of the early church, we find a lot of relatability in terms of them actually following this directive from Jesus, the go, the all nations thing. In fact, I've got a question for you if you know church history. How long after Jesus said the whole go thing and authorized them to go, was it before the early church actually left the place that they were most comfortable with, which was Jerusalem? How long was it till they left the people that they were used to talking with? Do you think that they got the going to them message after 5 weeks? Do you think it took them about 5 months? Think it was 5 years? Or do you think it was 15 years? I don't know who's hosting Jeopardy right now, but whoever is, there's the music to go with it. And the answer is actually kind of both of these last two ones right here. Sorry, there's two right answers. Acts chapter 8 records that after a member of the early church leadership was publicly killed, then the group of early Christians became so persecuted, then they started to scatter out a little bit. But also, it wasn't until really 15 years, 10 years after that initial scattering, that we have the Apostle Paul's first missionary journey where he was really going out specifically to follow the command of Jesus.
And that kind of brings us to modern day our church and where our church actually lived that out. Court Street Christian Church started well over 100 years ago, and it was actually started from a group of ladies from First Christian Church downtown Salem that wanted to reach the children in the outer lying regions of Salem, the country kids that couldn't get into church. They had this idea that we would go to them, and they actually built a little bungalow Christian Church, and that was the beginning, the DNA of how Court Street started. This idea that we are going to take Jesus' words seriously and go to them, be part of the culture, be part of sharing God's goodness into the world. And so, like the early church, though, I do think there is still this tension of feeling really comfortable in our Christian bubble and in our Christian culture. And there's this tension to want to stay nestled inside of that or to actually leave it and go into the world. And so today what we want to be doing is asking ourselves some really reflective questions, really kind of challenging that tension inside of all of us to really live out this message and this charge that Jesus gave us. And so the first question that we are going to be asking ourselves is, am I open? Am I open to this?
Yeah, are we open to this? And what we're not saying for sure is we're not saying don't ever come to us, so you shouldn't come to church. In fact, shut off your TV or whatever you're watching this right now. It's really a both and, but what we're drawing attention to is that the primary heartbeat was that Christianity was designed to be an along the way experience. It was designed to go to the ends of the earth. It wasn't designed to all gather together and then just shelter in place and grow out from there. It was a mobile enterprise. And I want to look at a scripture today. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to look at it through this lens that we're talking about of what does this mean, and are we really open to this movement that Jesus was establishing, because it gets kind of no kidding real quick. In fact, Matthew 5, it's the most famous sermon ever preached. The one you're listening to now will become the second most after we're done with it. But no, this is the most famous sermon ever preached, and it's really Jesus' kind of inaugural address. It's at the beginning of his public ministry, and he comes out with a big bang with this declaration of who he is and the kingdom that he's declaring and who God is. So he gets right into it. This is the opening lines right here as he stands up before this crowd of people, and he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Right out of the gate, he starts to say things that are counterintuitive. In fact, a lot of people that have studied this passage, myself included, we realized he's declaring an upside-down kingdom. We're used to a kingdom that's building a certain way and there's hierarchies. He's actually drawing attention to something that's different, to some heavenly values that he wants to have come to earth through his disciples. So blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. I'm skipping ahead through a few of them here just for the sake of time. And blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, he says, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So, if you've been around church for a while like I have, you probably hear those words or you've read them, you've heard us study them before, and you kind of are inclined probably to just kind of nod along in agreement like, yeah, it's tough, but it's also, yeah, I kind of get it. I want to just kind of invite you to understand the pop. Like this was a real, probably attention getter for the early people who were following Jesus, and it still should be for us too, because these values, they don't come naturally to us, honestly, at least not in our fleshly nature. Our godly nature, that's the only place where this starts to make sense. But imagine if I made it more personal for you and for me. And I said this, I said, blessed is your spouse as they go through depression? What if I said to you, blessed is your kid, as they were about to be excited to welcome their first child and they experienced a miscarriage and now they're mourning? Blessed is your best friend who at work something happened and they needed to tell the truth about it to make it right, and the other people now view them as a traitor because they didn't keep the secret, and management and their job is in jeopardy and they're being persecuted for doing what's right. Why don't you just rejoice about all that stuff and feel good about it, because in heaven someday it will all be better? You see, Jesus was drawing their attention to the deeper things in life, the more difficult things in life, the things that they'd been taught to pray that God would miracle their way through them, not that they would pray, as I'm experiencing this, God, meet me in it, because God mourns in this world, because God knows what it's like to feel happy and to feel blessed in a good way and to feel the blessing of feeling sorrow with another person. And so really what this question is inviting us to is Jesus is saying, here's the new kingdom. Here's the new vision for what, if you're going to follow me, it looks like this. We're changing things and revealing the very heart of God to everyone. Are you open to it? Are you open to it? It's a no kidding type invitation.
For sure. And as we're looking at church in that lens, we could build a church that feels more like a fortress. In fact, let's look at this slide here. Am I open? Does church feel like a fortress? And honestly, when you think of that word fortress, what it really evokes in me is a place that's closed, a place that is concerned with just making you feel safe and comfortable. And it's a place that's hard for anyone else to get in. So it's a very closed off type of an environment that a fortress creates.
Yeah, I like it too, because it kind of has this air of like, we need to build a wall to protect ourselves from all the bad out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
And what happens is when you build a fortress, when people go out of that, they're really going out prepared for battle. As opposed to, does the church feel more like a sanctuary? And to me, that word sanctuary is this respite spot. It's this place that you can go to be rejuvenated, to come and to feel like you're being refreshed, and that you're preparing actually to go out into the world and be healers because you've been healed yourself. And so those are two very different word pictures of what a church could look like. And definitely at Court Street, we want to lean in to church feeling and being like a sanctuary for us.
Yeah, this honestly too, it's easy for me to nod along with some of this stuff, but these types of distinctions are really where some pretty terrible stuff can leak into our lives. Like I know this week as we were doing our sermon research, you found kind of some messy history of some churches in America.
I did. I love it when Christians ever apologize for when they've gotten it wrong, when they've missed the mark. And I found a great article from a university president. He is the president of Bob Jones University. He looked at his history, the history of the university, and he and others felt very sad about how they had engaged culture, especially during the time when our society had gratefully gotten rid of segregation and we were going into a movement of desegregation. And that university decided to kind of tighten up like a fortress about that particular issue. They even sadly used scripture to back up their claims of why they wanted to keep some people out of their university. And it wasn't even until the 1970s that they even allowed African Americans to even come to their school. And then it wasn't even something until the 1980s that they even allowed interracial dating at their university. And that is a tragic way to look at Christianity. And I'm glad for the apology. I'm glad for them realizing that that was a huge misstep. And it was a misstep that gave Christians a bad name, and then in turn, of course, gave Christ a bad name. Definitely different than the big commission he gave and the big story he wanted to tell for the whole world, for all people.
Yeah. Well, hey, so first question for us today is, are we open? Are we open to this heavenly value system? Jesus made a lot of other pretty intense claims, from who he was to the invitation to actually love the people who are enemies of us. And so are you open to that? It's a no kidding type thing. And the second question that we want to draw your attention to is this: am I engaging? Okay? Am I open to this whole heavenly value system, the kingdom that Jesus was describing? And then am I really engaging with it? And to make this question really pop for us, I'm going to continue. We're going to pick up Jesus' sermon right where we left off in Matthew chapter 5. And he has this little bit that he says to him after describing all these Beatitudes, as they're called, and the blessed are's and all this. He says, "You are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and to be trampled underfoot." Now, we use the word salt and saltiness and this kind of thing kind of in more of a sarcastic fashion in our society, don't we? It's like, "Oh, Becca, you came in kind of salty today to this sermon," this kind of deal. Or maybe you're used to it more in the sense of like, you should be watching your salt intake, and so it's kind of this negative thing you need to be managing. But man, this is more talking about salt being used as a preservative at the time. Remember, they didn't have modern refrigeration like we do. This was also referencing salt being something that added flavor, the spice of life. Life tastes different with salt in a good way, doesn't it? And so what he's talking about here is he's talking about the flavor of the kingdom of heaven, really. And anytime that I've heard this preached, or not, most of the times anyway, the salt is oftentimes referred to pretty heavily, and we compared some good notes about this, is it's usually talked about the church, the people of God, being very moral people. We're supposed to preserve this moral integrity. We're supposed to preserve this standard and convince the world to leave their immoral ways and join this moral ways and this sort of a thing. And I want to draw your attention to really the actual context of the passage and what Jesus was talking about. And so let's go back to the question, am I engaging, and the idea is this: am I engaging? The come to us mentality is conform to morality, that the salt thing is about the other people getting it right. It's about pointing out where things are wrong, and that's what we're supposed to do to follow God, and that we're supposed to try really hard to live up to this moral standard. But the passage is really talking about that new kingdom that Jesus was painting the picture of, the upside down kingdom, the values that make us go, I don't know about that. It's kind of scary to me. It doesn't feel safe. But also when I'm suffering, to know that God's with me, and I'm not suffering because he's wanting to torture me, but he's suffering with me and he's cheering me on through it. That's a different way to look. And so are we engaging with the world in a way that is more go to them, the way Jesus was talking about, which is living in faith, living in love, leaning into these values, that to be mourning is to actually be blessed. To be persecuted sometimes is to actually be experiencing blessing, that God's experiencing it with us. Instead of pointing out what's wrong over here, we're pointing out and we're inviting people into this bigger vision for who God is and what he has for their lives.
We have a Court Streeter that really models this really, really well. Her name is Lisa Martin. Lisa is a longtime Court Streeter. She's a wife and a daughter and a new grandma, and she's also our head of our Kids Hope program. And boy, she just did a tremendous job of having a going out to them type of an attitude, especially during the pandemic. She just didn't put down her role of wanting to inject goodness into our school system just because the pandemic limited her. She was still figuring out creative ways to feed kids. She figured out creative ways that we could partner with the kids and give them a great Christmas. She figured out how to partner with the teachers and just give them much needed encouragement during this time. And I can promise you that she went about the business of going to them, not trying to change anything about them, but saying, I am open here and I am available to you to make sure that you have what you need. And she just gave Christianity and Christ a beautiful name by representing him and his mission very, very well.
Yeah, and I absolutely love this because David, if you'll bounce me back to the last chart that we were just looking at here, this morality thing and this whole bit. Our Kids Hope mentoring program isn't about this. Let's go into the schools and teach them all the rules, from God or this kind of stuff. But it's actually more about this, where we're going in and we're just pouring the love of God into students through relationships. We're helping them understand stuff like math and grammar and just keep up on everyday things. And it's making their life just better. Guess what? When you sow seeds of love, it grows seeds of love and goodness in people. And that's part of that kingdom and the go to them mentality that I love about this church. I absolutely love it. Well, hey, we're 2 questions in. We promised you 3. Here we go. Here's the 3rd one. So, are you open to this whole thing? It is a bit scary. Are you engaging from the right perspective, this with God perspective of how Jesus engaged with the world? And then 3rd thing is this, simply, are you available? Are you available? And let's jump right to the words of Jesus, Matthew 5. This has been fun to look at this passage for me this week. It's been very meaningful. He goes on, what he's doing is he hit his group with this paradigm shifting, this mind-bending thing of the world and God are not as you experience it. It actually looks like this. And now he's giving them some kind of examples to kind of help them assimilate into it. He talked about salt. They all know what salt is. Now he's going to talk about light. You're the light of the world, he says. A town built on a hill can't be hidden. Oh, we get that. That's a no-duh kind of thing, Jesus. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. This might have elicited a few chuckles. Of course we don't. That's silliness. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. He's saying to them, hey, guess what? This kingdom thing that we're talking about, this beautiful way of living and engaging, this heavenly value system that's come to you, share it as you're going along. Don't just huddle together about it. Let it shine before everybody. Let it be broadcast, carry it out, and shine it into the whole world.
One of the things that can kind of get in the way of feeling like we're available is just our schedule. And so if we're looking at this chart here, and we're looking at these 2 different ways that we can approach church and our Christian culture, the come to us mentality says, I'm too busy. And the go to them really says, yes, I am available. I am going to go to you. I had to really wrestle with this own question in my own life when I was a young mom. Very busy and active in my church, very busy and active like leading Bible study and raising these kids. But when they all became school age, my husband and I we were intentional that we wanted to have them be part of the public school system. No problem, no shame if that's not your journey, but that was going to be our journey. And one of the things I really needed to look at my schedule was, how am I going to be able to make myself available to serve that community? So every Friday, that was my day to go and serve at the elementary school. And I'm telling you, I loved it. I helped teachers prep for art projects by cutting out little paper squares. I helped them with their grading. I got to do one-on-one readings with children, and it just filled me up. And after I started there for a while and just being a presence in the school, I noticed that especially a few of the teachers, they wanted to sit at the table that I was at cutting or grading, and we just chatted. We just talked about life. I didn't have any sort of agenda coming into it of what I wanted to preach at them, but I just listened. And that kind of a relationship, it breeded just these organic, really thoughtful, beautiful conversations, to the point where I even have one of those teachers that still pulls my door every once in a while, comes to my own home and just wants to sit and talk. And I am so grateful that at that season in my life, I chose to be available. And not just available to my Christian community, but to be available to somebody outside of my bubble. And the fruit that I've seen of that has been tremendous. I've absolutely loved it.
Yeah. This is a pretty rubber meets the road type question, isn't it? And but the truth is, this busyness right here, this reactivity to life, this just sneaks in. We're always having to. We don't drift towards the healthy thing of having margin and being available. That's actually a discipline for us. And even like you're talking about, sometimes Christianity can become this to-do list where it's like, man, between Bible study, between this, between that, between going to the Christian camp, going to the Christian retreat, going to the Christian this, to the Christian that, that our calendar is so full of these things which can be really good, right? But it's so full that we're so busy that we're not available. And it kind of led us to this cheeky question this week of, am I too busy being a Christian to give something about the world? I'm going to give you a minute to just kind of think, what do you want to fill in here? It starts with a C. It's 4 letters. Anybody want to guess? Becca, do you have a guess? No,
I have a guess. I do.
All right. Well, here's the answer. Am I too busy being a Christian to give a care about the world? You know, we can get so busy with this come to us type mentality that eventually our life is like we're shining light into other people that are shining light back, and we're not actually going out. So there's some good that can happen in that, but Christianity was always meant to be out there being shared, to be lighting the world, to be providing these extra flavors, to be this saltiness that makes the taste, oh my goodness, I see this new kingdom. Now even as I'm going through difficulty, I'm not forsaken by God, I'm loved by God. And that's beautiful, that's powerful. And so are you and I available? Are we available enough? Or are we too busy even just keeping up with the Christian checklist to actually care about the world the way that Jesus did and the way that he commanded us to?
You know, I wanted just to pause and just celebrate Court Street a little bit and just to acknowledge I've been part of this community. I've said this many times since the time I was little girl. In fact, I had a member of our church bring me this photo this week. This is me here in this little Halloween costume, and just separating myself is a clown, a hippie, and then this scarecrow over here eventually became my husband. Actually, that's how long we have been involved in this place, a long, long time. And I absolutely loved having this place nourish me, teach me, even sometimes shelter me. But the thing I love the most about it is it sent me out. And it gave me permission to go out and share what I had been learning and feeling about God and feeling about the world, and to be a light, to be something that is helpful and tastes good to other people when they encounter what I've experienced here from this place. You know, even when we designed the sanctuary, and I know unfortunately you here online, maybe some of you have never even been to this physical building. If you can, I really invite you to come and show up on a Sunday morning and be part of us. But let me just paint a picture if you haven't been here, or go see some photos on our website. Our sanctuary worship center has these big, giant vaulted ceilings, and then huge windows all around. And we're located right in the middle of a historic neighborhood in Salem, Oregon. And we designed this place so that when people are walking by, walking their dogs, or just having a Sunday stroll, they can look in. And it demystifies what happens in a church building, maybe for some people who have never darkened the door. And they can look in and they can see mostly normal people in here and singing together, and then listening to a message together, and then oddly having like a really teeny tiny little snack, you know, just like we're really on a tight budget and we can only give each other like a little cracker and a little piece of
We're
juice.
watching our carbs.
Yeah. No, they watch us having communion together, and it demystifies what's happening inside here. We want to be open to our community. We want them to be able to see us. And Court Street has been that type of a place, and I want to celebrate the heart of that we are a sanctuary, that when we come together and do good things in unity, it really makes an impact in our community. But we have never been afraid to make sure that we are always filling up and then sending people out. And having that be the rhythm of this place has really lived out what Jesus really called us to do.
Well, hey, you know, hopefully this has stirred up some good new awareness for you. Maybe it's stirred up some fresh repentance, you know, but this idea of being open to what Jesus described, this picture that he painted, this taste of heaven that was supposed to come into the world, that gets to come into the world through us as we cooperate with the Spirit of God and as we live these things out, not perfectly. I really appreciated this story about the apology. Hopefully, hopefully that's actually part of the sweet taste of God, is the humility of Christians, that we go, I think differently about that now, or I was wrong. I've changed my mind, and I think I was actually resisting God, and now I'm moving in this direction. That's a beautiful thing, and it's all part of this declaration to people of this kingdom of God. That isn't about keeping people out, that isn't about building walls that are hard for people to get into and to make us feel safer in this world or this type thing. It's this activation of this heavenly value system, this life that is truly life, that doesn't even end when this life stops. It keeps going on for eternity with the God who has chosen to share it all so graciously with us. So are you open? Are you engaging in the ways that we're talking about? Are you also just available? Sometimes we're open, we're engaging, we're wanting to do it, but we're just too darn busy, aren't we? And today the invitation for you, I don't know how God's going to play this out in your life, but I hope that you'll say yes to him in a fresh way and that you will embrace this wonderful invitation and command even from Jesus to go and to be this light, to be this flavor to the world. We're going to give the scripture the last word here today. We're going to go to, this is the Message paraphrase that was put together by a pastor who was an expert in some of the languages that the scripture was written in. And here's how he says Jesus's bit here about light. Listen to this, I just love it. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God's not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this, as public as a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you will prompt people to open up with God, the generous Father in heaven. Isn't that beautiful? Well, hey, it's a privilege to get to share this stuff with you this week for Pastor Becca and myself. We hope that you have an exceptional week. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.